You're watching Booze Hackers. Okay, so welcome back. We've hit the end of the summer and thought we'd finish the summer off with the quintessential summer cocktail, the margarita. So, Adrian, you were sharing with me that you had really never had a proper margarita, just kind of one of those sugar bombs that you get at a Tex-Mex place, I guess. That is,
Yeah, pretty much.
yeah.
And that's what I thought they were. And that's why I never really had one. I was like, okay, so this 64-ounce glowing blue thing is a margarita. I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, I'll just stick to this. Thanks.
Yeah. No, they're horrible. I mean, they're just super
Yeah.
sweet, and they usually don't even have that much alcohol in them because people are just, oh yeah, give me this big frozen thing, and yeah, they're just not very good.
But you know what I found with almost every alcohol? It's like my wife told me before we got married. When I told her I didn't like beer, she said, "Oh, you just haven't had the right kind."
Yep.
And I learned today it was the same with margaritas.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I did not drink beer till I went to Europe, and it was like, oh, this brown ale served at room temperature is much better than that Bud Light stuff that all my friends drink. Or
Ice cold
right,
neon sign.
right,
There's a reason it's ice cold.
Milwaukee's Beast or whatever. There's actually a comedian who's got a great bit about Coors. When they put on the can, they put on a blue thing that would turn blue if it was cold enough, right? And he goes, Coors feels that you're not smart enough to know when your beer is cold, right? It is a funny bit, but
well, it's a safety measure because it tastes so bad if it's not super cold. You know that this is just to keep you safe, keep you from gagging.
correct. Yeah. So margaritas. So I did some research on margaritas, and we'll put some stuff in the show notes. But the stuff I read, almost everybody kind of had the same three stories that they talked about as the history of the margarita. And one was some Dallas socialite named Margarita, and she had it at her home, and she had rich people who came to visit her, and one of them was Tommy Hilton, who was part of the Hilton family, and so he put it on the Hilton bar menu at the hotels, and that's how it kind of took off. Another one was a bartender who lived by Tijuana and Baja California, who had a friend who was apparently allergic to all alcohol except tequila, and he came up with this recipe. But the other kind of origin story that actually to me sounds the most likely is that there's a drink called the Daisy, and the Daisy is brandy with some orange liqueur and lime juice. So sounds a little bit familiar, right? Versus the tequila with orange liqueur and lime juice. And the Spanish name, or the Spanish word for Daisy, is margarita. So that's kind of, I'm guessing, is really the true origin, but it sounds like there's a lot of folklore and other, hey, I invented this. And in fact, one of the guys who claims he invented it, people have pointed out that there was advertisements for the margarita before he ever said that he invented it, right? So,
Right.
Obviously, as security people, and we do open source intelligence gathering, et cetera, right? That this guy had been busted from that aspect. But you could get away with a lot more 50 years ago than you can get away with today, right?
Sure.
Because
it's tough, but not impossible today. I mean, I'm sure you saw the stories about what happened at Black Hat, the company with the amazing new technology.
I read Bruce's rebuttal this morning, Bruce Schneider's rebuttal.
Oh, really?
This morning.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah. It was pretty interesting because he said they actually contacted him a couple of years ago or something, and he basically was like, he just read the synopsis and went, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, no.
It moved on, and some of these, apparently a couple of those people claim to have some patents, and the stuff they have patents in
I looked.
is
I
not
did that
even
research.
relevant.
Nothing.
Yeah, it's just that
Big
whole thing
fat
is,
zero.
yeah, bizarre. And so, I mean, people are going to call you out, right? If you try to BS them, especially in our community, you know, there's a lot of people who are very smart, and they're going to call you out on that BS.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I feel like it's still possible. It's just because it still takes a certain class of people that are, get that, wait a minute, like this doesn't, first somebody has to detect that something's off, and then somebody has to go do the research.
Yep.
That can happen a lot faster these days than with the margarita back in when was that, the 50s or something like that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, we do suffer a little bit from, the old echo chamber sometimes, right? Some stuff gets passed around as gospel, and then someone goes, come on, everybody, this is kind of not really what we should be doing, right?
Yeah.
So
I do think, true or not, that a hotel chain would be a really good way to introduce a new type of drink.
Yeah.
People coming in, traveling, business people, stuff like that. I had this great, new drink at the Hilton in Dallas or Houston or something like that. How come you guys don't have it here? And then they go find out what that is. I feel like it would travel pretty quick if we wanted to come up with we just have to convince a hotel chain to sell our new drink. A new drink idea.
Well, we may have to do a story on the Moscow Mule then. Do a whole episode on the Moscow Mule.
Sure.
It's got a very similar origin story, which is not relevant to today's episode, but you kind of go, oh, really? Because you think, oh, this is a Russian drink and blah, blah, blah. No, it's not really. So,
and then we should come up with our own, and we should call it Crown Sterling or Time or something like that.
Yeah. So tequila is obviously the main ingredient in a margarita. And one of the things I read, and it could be true, it could not be true again, is that silver tequila is the preferred tequila for margaritas. And as I did some more research, a lot of tequila experts or passionate people about tequila think that silver tequila is kind of the purest form of tequila because it's unaged. And that's kind of counter to, as whiskey people, right? We go, oh, that's a 20-year-old Scotch. That is the Scotch, or 25-year-old Scotch. We judge things by how many years did it spend in the barrel. And tequila is almost the opposite. Is a lot of silver tequila is regarded very highly because it hasn't spent hardly any time in the bottle, or sorry, in the barrel. Reposado only spends up to a year in a barrel, and so then they created some ultra reposado. I think it's called it's called extra aneo, and I'm not sure. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah, it's got one of those ends, and añejo.
Añejo, okay.
Yeah.
And so that's aged at least 3 years, whereas regular añejo is aged 1 year. So reposado is less than 12 months. So as you talk about that quality of tequila, we're not judging it like we judge whiskey. It's almost kind of that the less is more type model. And to throw back to another technology metaphor, right? We used to brag about our servers. The uptime of my Linux server was 10 years or whatever. And now in this cloud world, we kind of brag about, it was up 5 seconds, or it was up 10 microseconds or whatever, as we talk about serverless technology, right? It's almost flipped that conversation on its head a bit. And so tequila has a little bit different, I guess, expectations as you talk about the aging process, et cetera. So all the recipes I had read was use a silver tequila, a white tequila to make your margaritas, which makes sense too as well, because the as you age it, you kind of smooth out some of those flavors. And so then you use that tequila more as a sipping tequila the older it gets, versus kind of the raw tequila. So.
Right. Yeah. So I'm actually, I am paying attention. What I'm doing over here is I think I'm going to share my screen to real quickly share what I had today. Since I don't have them with me, what I did is I went to the local Mexican restaurant, had a late lunch around 4, and tried out some of these. And honestly, I really enjoyed every one that I had. And all right, I think I've got all that set up there. Let me try to share that. And yeah, like we learned from last week, or the last episode, the shoot, what is it called?
Mezcal.
The mezcal. I almost called it Mezteca, which is very different from. That's also important in Mexican cuisine, but that is not a liquor. So yeah, the only stuff I didn't like was the stuff that was aged at, some idiot apparently put into a barrel or something like that. So that was also, something I learned very quickly in that experience, is that, aging doesn't always improve a spirit, depending on what kind of spirit it is and what you're going for. Yeah,
no, definitely. Sometimes it's overkill sticking it into a barrel for 20 some years.
Right. So as you can tell, this one was, I think they were all shaken, mixed and shaken. And this first one here is the double barrel margarita. And it reminded me a lot of a Caparina or a mojito, in that, it was very tart, had a lot of lime to it, wasn't overly sweet, which is what made me happy about it. And I think that was maybe my second favorite. And you can see here, the place I went to is called Soccer Taco, and you can see the description there: Grand Marnier Reposado, and that's a tequila that they get made for them. So liquor stores, it's a big thing now where that their name goes on the bottle and they get their barrel.
Right.
So these restaurants are doing that too, where you can see, somebody made a stamp and they stamp it on the bottle. So it's their tequila. And yeah, that was good. And the second one he gave me was a little bit sweeter, orange and lime. And you could taste a lot of the orange, a little sweeter. That was a Chango margarita.
Okay.
So that has your silver tequila in it.
Right.
I think they all had agave nectar to sweeten it, and then fresh orange and lime. And then I think my favorite was this one. And this is cucumber and mint that's in it. And it was just amazing. Like the combination of the different flavors, it almost tasted like there's some melon in it, like a honeydew melon, like that kind of taste to it. And I just, every sip of that was magic. I was really, really tickled by that one.
Cool. Yeah, so I played around with a few recipes and looked at a wide variety, and kind of the place where I ended up at while testing some of these is using a 2-to-1 ratio while building the margarita. So you'd have 2 parts tequila, 1 part orange liqueur, and 1 part lime juice. So I would just measure it out in ounces. So 2 ounces of tequila, 1 ounce of lime juice, and 1 ounce of orange liqueur. Tried a couple of different tequilas. Also did some frozen margaritas as well. And again, kind of throwing back to our earlier conversation about how messy that gets, etc. is a cup of ice and a cup of frozen fruit plus that 2-1-1 ratio. Sorry, a cup of ice and a half a cup of fruit with that 2-1-1 ratio made a pretty good drink. And I did mango, strawberry, and blueberry. But in the end, I really just prefer that plain margarita over the rocks. It was kind of overwhelming. You're having to go buy frozen fruit and you're getting the blender out, and it's, it creates a mess and stuff. So I did find one recipe, however, that added a different ingredient. And once I added that, I was like, ooh, that's really nice. And my wife tried it. She's like, oh, that's pretty good as well. So we both were a fan of this.
If it's maple syrup, Mark is going to be really happy.
Yeah. So it wasn't, but that may be, I can throw one together later tonight maybe and see what the maple syrup tastes like.
I like maple syrup.
My guess is it's going to add a very different flavor to it. So I tried to avoid adding just pure sugar to a drink, right? Which is what the agave nectar is doing, and what simple syrup obviously is doing, unless that's really part of the drink. And I think with the margarita, you can get away with not doing that. You can just say 2 parts vodka, 1 part orange liqueur, 1 part lime juice. And I did read I tried one recipe that used just orange juice instead of the orange liqueur to lower the alcohol content a bit. It was all right. It wasn't great. But the magic ingredient we found was an elderflower liqueur.
Okay.
And so I added 1 part of that as well. So it's a very floral and sweet liqueur, which does help balance out some of the tartness of the lime juice and the tequila. But I thought it added a nice little kick to the overall drink. So again, maybe not super traditional in terms of the margarita, but I thought it did add a nice little flavor alternative to the original type of thing. And so now it's a 2-1-1-1 ratio, with the tequila obviously still being the dominant ingredient in the drink, but I found it to be pretty good. So, and the nice thing about the 2-1-1 is you can measure out and go, okay, 2 ounces, 1 ounce, or you want to go to 3 ounces. Now you're doing 1.5, 1.5, 1.5. So the math is pretty easy.
Scales.
Yes, it scales very well. You can do a lot of stuff with it. So I tried a couple of varieties of tequila. Like we said, I looked at the silver, and we went and bought a bottle of Camarena silver tequila.
Yep.
And that was about $20 for 750 milliliters. And then I also tried, went to Costco, who's, buy big stuff at Costco.
Right. Oh boy.
And got this. So about the same price point. So double the amount of tequila you get for about $20. And I also had a bottle of Reposado that I bought years ago at Costco as well, which I think a little bit higher price point. I'm pretty happy with the Kirkland silver tequila. My wife preferred the other silver tequila, but I think the Kirkland has a little bit more bite to it. So if you don't like the taste of tequila, the other alternative was a little smoother. But I thought it was pretty good. And then the orange liqueur I use is this, I don't even know how to pronounce this, but it's from Brazil. And so it's a bit of a premium orange liqueur. So John de Casper and Sons, I don't know, but it's not the cheap, Grand Marnier or whatever orange liqueur that you may just buy for $5 a bottle or something. So, what I've been making then is the Kirklands with the 03 and a little bit of the St. Elder elderflower liqueur. And I found that makes a very nice drink, pretty affordable. My strategy on mixed drinks and cocktails is use quality ingredients, but not great ingredients, right? So, because the great ingredients you tend to want to just drink by themselves.
Yeah.
The crap ingredients are going to make crap drinks no matter what. So you might as well not even bother.
Right. And I think it would be useful, it sounds like you just told us where that is. Like it's going to be in that $20 bottle range somewhere.
Yep.
Because it's, I actually don't know how much this went for, this top shelf margarita I had here, the double barrel reposado. But you could taste the alcohol, and that was a good thing in that. Like that totally blew me away. Was not expecting to get a drink with a lot going on, with a lot of flavors, like a really nice finish on it, and to be able to taste the alcohol. Because again, the assumption I had, the faulty assumption I had, is that margaritas were made to be consumed in massive quantities and to hide the alcohol and to get college students super drunk.
Right. Cinco de Mayo, drunk people at fake Mexican restaurants. Right. Yeah. So
yeah, if that's America's fault, we're sorry, because this is totally a worthy drink. And if you've watched from the first episodes, I'm generally not a cocktail or mixed drink guy, so a lot of this stuff is brand new for me. And this is one that I'm really, like, honestly, I wasn't looking forward to this episode.
Really?
Margaritas are awful. I'm not going to enjoy it. I'm going to go try some. I didn't grab ingredients. I didn't make it because that's how much I thought I wasn't going to like it. Because honestly, I've got like a shelf full of mezcal now, and I'm not sure what to do with it.
Well, you could probably make some margaritas from that.
Probably. And that would be interesting because it has a very different flavor profile. The bartender who was working with me was fantastic over at the place we have here is called Soccer Taco. And, basic, but they do really good food, and they've got, it's a great place and good people. And this guy helped me along as a Venezuelan guy. And, he said he hates it, the mezcal.
Really?
Yeah. He can't, like, even the smell of it, like, he can't stand. Huh. And then we got into talking about rum, and it was a good conversation.
Yeah. A good bartender will make or break your dining experience. So I was at an event, and we were at a Italian restaurant in Little Italy in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. And this bartender was just out of the world. Like, what flavors do you like? What makes you happy? Right. Mm-hmm. I'll make you the perfect drink. Right. And and everybody, was like, holy crap, that was amazing. And, so you'd ask each person individually, what makes you happy? What kind of flavor profiles, you drink whiskeys, you drink, rums, you drink tequilas, whatever. Right. And he just knew drinks and like, okay, I'm going to put something together for you and we'll move forward. So yeah, a good bartender is an amazing thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So you've got some news now. We've kind of talked about margaritas that you wanted to share, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we've got, we didn't do news last week, so we've got a couple extra things here. Let's see. So one of the things we were going to talk about were, speaking of a good bartender knowing what you want, this concept that you sign up for a subscription service, kind of like what is Stitch Fix is the clothes equivalent of this. And we've got Bright Sellers, a company called Bright Sellers, and you tell them what you like and what you don't like, and they're taking you through, not asking you what wines you like or don't like, but what flavors you like and don't like. Do you like bitter dark chocolate, versus creamy milk chocolate or something like that? I'm assuming I've gone through getting a flavor profile, but I know you and I, we've got our doubts on how good of a job, and kind of an automated service here can do.
Yeah, and some of the reviews I had read of that were not terribly positive. And they may be doing amazing stuff, I don't know, but it was also, you're getting some wines that it was very hard to price shop, right? So they claim, hey, this is a $20 bottle of wine, and you kind of go,
Is it really? Yeah.
I don't know how I can prove that because I can't find it anywhere else, right? And wine is one of these areas where there's just so many producers around the world
Right.
that it is hard to figure out how's that being distributed. Are you just buying something at auction and now you've got 20 cases of it that you've got to offload somehow? And one of the other things that some of the reviews I read was people actually went in and changed their taste selections, right? And I remember one of the questions was, what kind of chocolate do you like? Do you like milk chocolate? Do you like semi-sweet? Do you like dark, right? And people would go in and change those answers. And then the wine recommendations stayed the same, right? And you think, okay, well, how do you line that up? I'm fortunate enough here in Kansas City that we've got some pretty amazing liquor stores, and some of them actually employ wine sommeliers
Oh, wow.
to manage their wine selection, right? And so you can go in and go, hey, these are my price point I'm looking at. These are the tastes I like. And they're going to treat you like you're at a restaurant and go, okay, this is the bottle I recommend. And they've got lots of training and expertise and tasting experience on all these wines. And so I think that's somewhat unique. We're a mid-market metro area, right? KC isn't the biggest city in the world, but we're big enough that we have some of that selection. And I would imagine that people that live in bigger cities would probably have a similar type of experience at a liquor store.
Right. Yeah. And I generally, and I shouldn't say too much. I haven't actually tried this out. And from what you said, it sounded like most of the problems people had nothing to do with the algorithm or, how they were choosing wines, but just operationally, like my wine didn't show up, or it was the wrong thing, or, like just startup problems,
Yeah.
not wine problems.
And you actually had a good analogy at the beginning, like Stitch Fix. And I did Stitch Fix because my wife did it. And that's kind of, it's not really my style, or, this doesn't really fit as well as I thought. There's some things that I know I like, and I know that, and someone else giving me advice, I kind of go, and every once in a while I get a piece and, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. It's a little bit outside my comfort zone, but it felt good. But yeah, I mean, the part of the problem too is our taste buds that we've talked about previously is that this is all very subjective, and what appeals to me one day may not appeal to me the next day. Right. And how do you continue on that path? So, I mean, it's an interesting concept. And I know you and I kind of tossed the idea about, can we write an algorithm somewhere that would maybe even be superior?
Right.
Who knows?
I've been tempted to. So I think one of these things works better when it's discovering new things, when they're not saying everything we send you is going to be great, you're going to love it. Based on this, 14 question survey.
Right.
So like on the liquor side, you've got stuff like Flaviar, I think is how you would say it, where it's a subscription, and they send you these small bottles. So you get like 5 bottles a month or something like that. And they're, they've given you different bourbons, whiskeys, scotches, stuff like that. Like,
right.
I don't know if every set that comes is vastly different things or themed, like 5 different scotches versus 5 different bourbons. But I kind of like that better, because as a customer, you don't have the expectation that you're going to love everything. Your only expectation is, I'm going to try new things.
Yeah.
And in that same realm, the only thing I have a subscription that I do is the Hot Ones monthly hot sauce box from Heatonist, and that's a lot of fun. My son really likes hot sauce, and so do I. So we get excited when that box shows up, and some of them are just inedible. Like, they're so hot, you have to be super careful with it. And then other ones, like, they disappear in like 2 days. We're
Is
almost.
that coming from the guys who do the Hot Ones
Yep.
YouTube channel?
Yeah, so not those guys. They partner with a company called Heatonist, and I think it might be the same guys that are behind both the show and the sauces, but I don't know that for sure. Yeah, it's at the very least a partnership because it is Hot Ones branded.
Okay, so I'd say a significant portion of those hot sauces on the show actually come from a place that I drive past twice a day.
Oh yeah,
going back and forth to work, right?
I've heard it. I've heard. Yeah, hot sauces are one of those things where, like, everybody isn't making them in grandma's kitchen or something like that.
Yeah.
Like they hire a place to build those sauces, and basically like a hot sauce factory.
Right, and I think that's essentially what their business model is they do spices, they do shakers, they do hot sauces, and people come to them with their recipes, and they're able to mass produce a lot of that stuff. So, yeah, I know for sure, like the damam.
Yeah,
I
that comes straight from hell, from what I can tell.
It comes from Kansas City, so
okay.
Yeah,
you said it, not me.
I literally drive past that place twice a day.
Wow,
that it comes from. So
do you have to protect your eyes at all when you drive past it?
Yeah,
I bet you can smell it.
You can't. The one that throws me the most is I also drive past a Hostess factory.
Okay,
that's the one I can smell.
Wow,
the yeast. You can just smell the baking and the yeast on the highway. Especially if I've got a convertible. So if I've got the top down and I drive past that at 6:30 in the morning, it's like heaven for about 10 seconds. You're just like, oh, that's awesome. And then you get to work and I'm like, okay, now I'm ready for some bread.
Right. Yeah, I bet I know what it is. It's the same reason that there's so many hot sauces made in so few places. It's because that stuff is dangerous. So
maybe.
I mean, it's probably they probably have some serious scrubbers and filters and stuff like that, making sure that stuff doesn't get into the air outside, and inside that place, I'm sure like the safety protocols are pretty stringent because you can hurt yourself with peppers.
Yeah, especially I mean there's
Ask me how I know.
There's I'll guess.
Yeah.
Cut your finger and cut some chilies up and just eating it.
No, just prepping peppers and not watching what I'm touching with my fingers and stuff like that.
And then you wipe your eye and
just get your hands in the peppers real good, and it's a good scrub. It's a good face scrub. But what
that are things that are dangerous.
Yeah.
There's another article that we had that was radioactive whiskey.
Yeah. So I've actually got 3. Yeah, and this one is, I'm sure most people watching this have probably seen this by now, passed around a lot on social media. But yeah, so they've intentionally taken radioactive grain that shows up as radioactive from Chernobyl and distilled it into vodka for whatever reason. Yep.
And can they actually trace any radioactivity after the distillation, or is it as you're purifying? I mean, because you're kind of, as you distill spirits, you're basically boiling stuff and letting all those vapors go up, and then they cool down and you collect that residual stuff. And then as you do that process more and more times, you're purifying the liquor, right? So is there any leftover radiation, or is it just kind of a marketing hype that, hey, we started with
it's mostly marketing hype. I mean, they're not gathering it from zero or anything like that. I mean, yes, it does register as radioactive, but it's somewhere in between the scale of, yes, bananas are radioactive, and yes, you take a hit every time you jump on a plane,
right,
and take a flight. There's a certain amount of rads that you're exposed to. So it's one of those things. It's mostly hype. I mean, yes, it's technically in Chernobyl, but it's far enough out and it's been long enough that they say the amount of radiation is negligible.
Okay.
And so far, there's only one bottle of it.
Oh, okay. So it's not something that they've mass produced and I can go buy.
So they're hoping to produce 500 by the end of the year. But yeah, this is not something you're going to see show up in your shelves anywhere else. Like, this is a tourist thing for tourists that are going through Chernobyl.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to be able to even leave the country with. Well, I mean, the tourists will, but I don't think they'll get an export license on anything like that.
Okay. Interesting. I actually read something on Twitter this morning that kind of blew me away, that steel that is produced post World War II has a different radioactive registration than steel that was produced pre-World War II because of the bombs being set off in Japan, and then that radioactivity being spread across the world, which totally blew my mind that you could even measure that level of radioactivity. That just seemed very odd, but people were
That's going to be tiny.
Yeah, just in fact that they can go, they'll actually go take steel from ships and submarines that were sunk before the bombs were set off, and they can compare the differences between the two. And that's how they contest some of the sensitivity of these devices that measure radioactivity. I was like, that is the most bizarre thing I've heard in a long time.
So I watched the HBO special Chernobyl, which is amazing. And, so my dad has always worked in nuclear power plants his entire career since he became an engineer, since he got out of school. And so I always grew up knowing the basics, but seeing Chernobyl was just a totally different, seeing people at ground zero where, the graphite's been scattered about and somebody picks up a piece of graphite. Like, I mean, that was
why would you even do that?
Horrifying and amazing to watch.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, why indeed? That the person that didn't get to question that for long. So our third story, speaking of no way in hell that they're going to be able to export radioactive vodka. Our third story is about tariffs taking a toll on American whiskey producers' sales. So they're saying 63% of American whiskey exports have faced retaliatory tariffs, which we're seeing a lot of. I think we tend to focus on the ones from China.
Right.
There have been retaliatory tariffs from the EU as well, and other parts of the world. So yeah, it's apparently eating into it's like a 25% tariff increase, and they said sales have completely died off in some locations outside the States.
And to me, that kind of, as you mentioned, we focus so much on China, and you see soybeans and you hear about corn and, all of that stuff. And then the incoming steel, paper clips have shot up apparently. And, cars are becoming more expensive and electronics are becoming more expensive. But you're right. We don't really think about that in terms of whiskey and what's that impact as we export our products to Europe. And certainly Europe is going through its own issues with Brexit right now, et cetera. So that's fascinating to me that that's even a thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, you have to understand how alcohol moves around the world. And I think we should maybe even do a show on this or have this instead of news one day, because I've got some gaps in my knowledge of how that works. I know within the U.S., you don't buy, I'm in Tennessee, liquor stores here can't buy, bourbon directly from a bourbon producer in Kentucky.
Right.
It gets bought and sold Well, first of all, they've got to get licenses, and then an importer here buys it, and then the liquor store, all they can get is whatever their distributor can get. And internationally, it's the same thing. You've got importers, and what's happened with these tariffs is in the EU and even Canada and Mexico, some of these importers are saying at that price, forget it.
Right.
And they're just not buying the stuff. So it's not that like it's hitting shelves in Europe and people aren't buying it because it's more expensive. It's not even making it that far. It's not even getting sent overseas in the first place because the distributors are saying, no, we're not going to, we can't sell Jack Daniels at the price that we would need to.
Right.
To make back on it. I don't know if Jack Daniels is one of these that's been hit, just throwing that out there as an example. And so they're not even buying it. So I assume there's some warehouses that are bursting at the seams here.
Yeah. So I've got a couple items. So one, my understanding is part of that's the outcome of prohibition. So when they put prohibition in and then they recalled it, they didn't really recall it. They left it up to the states. And so that's what started the whole distribution mess that we kind of live in. And why can I buy this product in one state and I can't buy it in another state? It's because we essentially said, well, we're no longer going to allow everybody to do anything they want. It's up to the states to legalize and control that process, which is why you have certain states with ABC liquor stores, right? So the state controls the pricing, right. The state controls the distribution.
Well, not just controls, they literally own it.
Right, yeah. And they're setting the price point and they make the profits and whatever. And then as you and I kind of talked previously, our friends at the Whiskey Tribe, and if anybody who's a whiskey drinker, you should go watch some of their videos. My wife actually told me the other night, she goes, I could watch these people all day long because they're just hilarious.
What is this?
They're called the Whiskey Tribe. So it's a couple of guys out of Texas, and there's probably, my guess is there's at least 100,000 people on the Facebook group at this point that participate in this pseudo organization. But one of the things that they pointed out on this video I was watching the other night was Ireland kind of shot itself in the foot because they raised the tariffs on their exports of their Irish whiskey, and right. Scotland did not. And over the years, then that pushed up the price point of Irish whiskey versus Scotch whiskey. And so now Scotch kind of dominates the international market. Right. Yeah. So these guys are hilarious. Daniel and Rex, they're very entertaining. There's a lot of information. They do a lot of great reviews. But one of the points again that Daniel was saying was that Ireland basically shot itself in the foot and almost killed its whiskey industry, and they've come back a little bit in the last 10 years. But there was a time, at one point, whiskey had kind of fallen out of flavor just at a worldwide market, right? And we're at a kind of
fallen out of flavor or favor?
Favor, I guess. Favor and flavor. Whiskey just wasn't very popular. And when you're competing in the global market and you're competing against other people and you're not setting yourself up for success, you may fail. And so the Irish whiskey industry really struggled for a while. And now everybody's kind of fighting over this piece of the pie for whiskey in the global market, and Ireland's starting to come back, but I think they have a lot of ways to go when you compare them against, Scottish whiskey and certainly American whiskey. We're at this craft whiskey period now that really didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago.
Auto playing videos.
Yes.
Showing me.
The scourge of the internet.
God, I thought we were done with that. It's killing me. Yeah, so this looks pretty cool. I'll check some of these out. And already, some of these I'm wanting to mark to watch here. Using a Soda Stream and whiskey.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty funny video. How do you carbonate some whiskey? Can you does it any different? Is it any good?
Yeah, whiskey barrel making. Any video that's like I've watched almost every video that's like the $10 version of something versus $100 version versus
from those guys in California.
I'm a sucker for that stuff.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So
cool. Well, I will check this out, and we should totally get that into the show notes as well.
Terrific.
But that's all I had for the news. Those are all the news items.
Terrific. Well, thanks everybody for watching. We certainly appreciate it. And if you have any comments, want to correct anything we said, yell at us, whatever, encourage us, we certainly appreciate it. And everybody have a great evening. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.